G'day everyone, my name's Tom Freer and welcome to the very first episode of my new video series. So for those that don't know me, my background is in technology and IT for businesses. Having worked in a lot of technology companies, worked for big corporates, I now run and manage a couple of IT companies here in Brisbane, and as part of that we're solving problems and challenges for customers all day, every day. So the team are constantly getting asked questions, finding the problems, and delivering solutions for our customers. And what I wanted to do as part of this video series is start to share some of that, share some insights into what's needed to run technology in your business, and generally provide some help to the wider community. So ideally, I'd love to have you guys send in your requests. You can Facebook me or LinkedIn. Any problems or challenges or questions that you might have around technology, how that works in your business, just generally how you want it to run better. So that's the objective. So leading into this, I've sort of asked around in the wider community through some of my business groups and peers, just to get a bit of a feel for some areas to start talking about and giving some insight. And without a doubt, the number one thing that came back, which I thought I'd address today, is around backups and how to protect that data in your business, and generally best strategies around running backups. So if we get cracking, the backing up your data, if there's nothing else you do, that is probably the most critical component of supporting your IT infrastructure. Whether you've got one computer with your Excel and Word documents on there, or your business has hundreds of computers with servers and cloud and all sorts of infrastructure, you need to make sure that the data that's on there is protected. So you need to understand a number of sort of areas around what you've currently got. So if we look at it, there's really three areas to focus on, just to get a baseline of what's going on in your business today. So firstly, understand where your data is. That might sound pretty straightforward, but it's quite amazing how many people we have talked to and seen in the past where they're not really sure where all their data is. It might be on a machine, it might be on a number of computers throughout the business. Really identifying where that data is. So making sure you know if it's on workstations, if it's on servers, if it's stored in the cloud, if it's a cloud-based application, where that data is. So be very clear about understanding where your data is. And that addresses a number of other challenges throughout your business as well as we move forward. The second component is to really look at and prioritize the type of data that you've got. So out of all that data, and there'll be heaps, you'll have applications, you'll have Word files, you'll have Excel, really start grouping those documents and applications and systems together and give them a priority. So if the worst was to happen, what do you need back absolutely as soon as possible? What is the most critical piece of data in your business that you couldn't run without? And that's going to be where you sort of really need to start looking at how you're going to back this stuff up. And the third part of this initial review is really understand where your backups currently run. So I'm going to assume that you are running some backups. If not, do something. You need to start doing that now. But know where your data is being backed up. Is it being backed up to the same computer or the same server? Is it being backed up to tape? Is it being backed up to a network drive? Is it being backed up to the cloud? You really need to understand those three elements to start really looking at a good strategy for backup. So we'll just quickly run through those. So the first one is understand where your data is. Where does it currently sit? Is it an application? Is it Word, Excel files? Is it your website? Is it an application you have in the cloud already? Understand and really document where that data lives. Number two is prioritize that. So prioritize the application, prioritize the data. What's the most critical for you to get back the quickest? Ultimately, we want to try and be able to be put in a position where you can recover any and all of it, but really focus on where the most critical pieces of data are. And the third part is look at what you're currently doing around backup against where it is and what the priority is, and where is that currently backed up to. So making sure you know where that is. So if something does happen tomorrow, you can get access to it. So that's what you need to really understand around backups and what you should know about your business and your data. Now, if we look at some really key strategies around protecting that data, I'll run through some of the tools and systems and applications, but to keep it really sort of structured, there's an approach that works really well, and that is what's known as the 3-2-1 approach. So the 3-2-1 is essentially having 3 copies of your data, having that data stored on 2 separate devices or physical media, and having at least one of those offsite. So that's where the 3-2-1 comes from. Now that strategy might sound overly complicated, but the reality is it can be done quite simply for most organisations. Yes, there's some investment and there's tools and there's systems required, but having that strategy in place really sets you up for being able to recover should the worst happen. And on that, if you have a look around, the stats on businesses being able to recover in the event of a substantial data loss are really low. The number of businesses that go out of business because of a loss of mass amounts of data is incredible. So you want to make sure you've got that protected. So the 3-2-1 strategy is one of the best ways to make that happen. Now, what you're going to ask me is, how do we actually do it? So I'm going to tell you, because there's no point me giving you a strategy without actually telling you how to implement it. And look, there are a few things in here, and it's going to depend on what systems you run, whether it's Mac or Windows or whatever, and where that data is. But I'll give you some tools and advice around what and how you're going to back this up. So firstly, if we look at, make sure that as much of your data as possible is centralized in somewhere, whether it be on a network storage device, whether it be on a PC, ideally on a server, or even more so these days up in the cloud on a platform like SharePoint or OneDrive or Gmail, Google Apps, Dropbox, something like that. So make sure you've got all your data centralized so you know where it is. If we're looking at applications, know where those data are. So you might have email servers for larger organizations, you might have on-site database servers, you might have servers sitting in the cloud, you might have your email and data sitting in the cloud. So we need to make sure, again, we know where all that is. But what you want to do is initially you want to look at doing a file level backup at the very, very least, backing up all the individual files and data in that way. So there's great tools around. Some of the tools that we use are a cloud-based tool called APPROACE, and that will allow us to back up your data, store it to a separate set of disks on your server, and then stream a copy of that up to the cloud. So all we're doing is moving the incremental backups to the cloud. So once we get that first chunk of data up there, it's really quite seamless. That solution works really well if you've got a single computer or couple of computers running around. Use this sort of technology and this tool to back up any data that's sitting on there. That product as well allows you to take a full snapshot of your server or your workstation, and you can store that on a local disk. So that will give you the 3 copies of your data and one offsite. So you would have your original copy on the server. Using the backup tool, it will copy it to a second separate disk, whether it's a USB drive or a network drive, and it will then copy that data offsite into the cloud. So you've now got 3 copies of that data, 2 of them on separate media and 1 in the cloud, which is offsite. So that is a really simple, straightforward solution to get your critical data offsite. As your business grows, you're going to have potentially multiple servers, you'll have multiple database systems, you might have virtual infrastructure, and this platform scales to support that. But there are some other tools that you want to consider, particularly if you're running virtual infrastructure. So I don't want to get too technical, but there's a product called Veeam, and that does an exceptional job of backing up your VMware and Hyper-V servers. And what it does is it creates a full snapshot of those servers. So that snapshot can be used to recover an entire instance of a server, which is fantastic. And the 3-2-1 strategy works again in that environment. You've got your original server copy, you're going to duplicate that every night to another set of disk, and then you have the ability to stream that either to the cloud or to another network or another location in your office. Again, you have that 3-2-1 approach. Now, the final aspect is looking at your cloud data and making sure it's protected, because just because your data's in the cloud doesn't necessarily, it means it's protected. So you want to look at how that's backed up. I'll actually run a separate session on that because there are a myriad of tools available to back that data up. But things like Gmail, Office 365, SharePoint and OneDrive being in the cloud, you want to make sure that you run an additional level of backup across those, and there's tools available that can do that as well. So hopefully that hasn't got too technical, but more so hopefully that's given you some really good strategies around protecting your environment. So if I quickly recap, you want to understand where your data is, prioritize that data and the applications, and know where you're backing it up to today. So if you know that and you're comfortable with that approach, great, you just want to have that in play. But if you're looking to implement a really good backup strategy, really consider the 3-2-1 approach. 3 copies of your data on 2 separate media and having 1 off-site, ideally in the cloud. You want to automate that as much as possible. Look for cloud-based tools that will do file-level backup, as well as like snapshot-style backups. That allow you to quickly recover should a server or workstation fail. But more importantly, if your office burns down, you've got your critical data out of the office and off-site and implement there. So look, that's backup. I'm really hoping that's given you some ideas. There are plenty of tools and systems available that will do backup for you. But my number one message is really back up your data regardless of where it is, or at least know how and where it is being backed up to, whether it's your email, your Word documents, your website, or your cloud application. At least know where it's backed up. And if you're not comfortable with how that's coming across, then look to implement your own strategies to make sure that you've got your backup protected. So look, that's all we're going to talk about today, and that's sort of answered a number of questions I think that have come through over the time leading up to this. Now, I'd love to hear from you, so please send through your questions, and we'll get to those and get them answered for you. And I'll be back next week with another episode, and we'll touch on another topic. Not sure what it is yet, but we'll certainly find some and answer that for you. So thanks a lot for joining in. Look forward to seeing you next time.